Anyway, what has happened in modern treatment? A great deal of wonderful development. We have a relapse program invented by Terry Gorski. I've known that young man from the beginning of his career. He's very brilliant. We have a whole lot of things about family damage, why many of us grew up the way we did. Children of alcoholics, adult children of alcoholics. We have all kinds of things brought into being as secondary disciplines, brought into being by some of the most brilliant people in the country, and I'm privileged to know some of them. I think that today, one of many ills in treatment, and they're universal, I'm not saying too much can be done about it. Number one, it is so introspective. We are forced by the fourth step and everything else to examine self to see what in the world it is that I have to rebuild. I can't rebuild a house unless I take an inventory of the thing and see what has to be done. And a lot of these secondary disciplines are brought in, and they're to be absorbed in a space of 28, 21, 15, or 7 days. Too brief a time. I remember once Rip told me there was a priest at Guest House who, after 3 or 4 months, is very discouraged. He said, "Rip, I can't see any progress." And Rip said, "Father, how many years of alcoholic drinking did it take you to get into the shape that brought you here?" It was about 18 years of alcoholic drinking. And he said, "You want to see a complete change about in a couple of months? Time, 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 time. Time is of the essence of getting well from a disease that took years to build up." Now, I must, if I happen to be addicted to alcohol, prescription drugs, street drugs, marijuana, anything, I have to come to a full realization that they control me, I do not control them. Because if I ever lose that conviction, I may die. All addiction is terminal. You stop it or it'll stop you, one or the other. And so I have to get a handle on that. And it's almost tragically amusing to hear a patient say, "Oh no, I'm done with step 1, I'm on 4 now." You're never done with step 1, you're never done with any of them. And that's why it is an invalid comparison to compare the 12 steps of AA to the 12 steps of a ladder. You leave the first step and go on to higher steps. You never leave any of the steps of AA. They are ongoing principles to live by. And the more you can deepen your awareness of your condition, step 1, the safer you will be. And so we have to put secondary disciplines where they belong. Suppose I come into treatment, I only have 15 days, and I'm on the fence. Well, one day I may be an alcoholic, and the next day, geez, I'm not too sure. Now, you want to talk about family problems? You want to talk about my emotional problems or sexual problems? I'll be happy to talk about that. Because all the while we're talking about them, I don't have to face step 1 and see if I really belong here. Basics, basics, basics. I always tell people we are not here to treat asparagus problems. We're here to treat addiction problems. Addiction, addiction. That's why I'm here, is to get a handle on that. And the non-alcoholic member of the family is to get a handle on the damage that is done him and to find out what can be done about it. Now, suppose you have deep-rooted problems caused by living in an alcoholic home. as a child. Suppose you have more than deep-seated sexual problems because you were the victim of incest as a child. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, what I am beginning to see is that as many males as females have suffered sexual abuse in their youth. But anyway, suppose we have all these things. I must be clean and sober to address and resolve any of them. First things must come first. I remember a priest who said he had 6 months of work with a clinical psychologist. He had been accused of poo-pooing work with professionals. And he said, oh no, I'm not against it at all. I'm just trying to make the point that I was sober when I was under his care. Sobriety first. Rip used to always tell his patients at guest house, fathers, if your sobriety does not come first, there will be nothing to come second. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, first things must come first. And this is the basics of all treatment. I have to help this person convince himself that he has a problem with alcohol, prescription drugs, or street drugs, and he has got to get a handle on that before he handles anything. Trying to address or treat too many or emphasizing too much any of these secondary things in the beginning of sobriety almost smacks of the mental health approach. Well, these things are causative of the drinking. Let's clear them up and we'll be able to face the drinking. No. The alcoholic or drug addict drinks or drugs because he can't not do it. And it is a myth, and it's rather silly to say, let's solve some of these things so I can concentrate on my sobriety. You'll never solve any of these things unless you're clean and sober. And so, as Rip used to always say, if you have 10 or 20 problems, and one of them is addiction, that must be addressed first. Now, as you get into the community of AA, or depending on whatever drug you chose as your drug of choice, NA, CA, whatever, always stay in the mainstream. These 12 principles came from Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you belong to any of these groups, you're sharing the exact same principles. Why did God allow me to get clean and sober, or to get clean or sober? Why? To rejoin the human race. To fulfill my responsibilities. Most alcoholics are either husbands or wives or children or parents. Most alcoholics have a job. Most alcoholics live in a neighborhood and in a community and go to a given church. And during the year that Rip spent with Bill Wilson, here's what Bill said about your religious faith. He said, whatever you were before you got sober, you ought to be a better one afterwards. Just like your family life, your home life, your social life, your work life, and everything else. Your faith should improve. Don't substitute AA for your church. AA is completely embarrassed by that. We're not your church. We don't want to be your church. That's for you to... What we will do is open the door to God. Now you take it from there. What we will do, if you cooperate with us, is help you to get sober and stay sober. Now you do with your life what your responsibilities in life call for. Why is it that many alcoholics who get well ignore the so-called outside world? The holidays are coming up and you're going to hear people, oh yeah, we had a wonderful New Year's Eve party and the only people there were AAs and Al-Anons. And it's announced with great pride. Where were your relatives, your neighbors, the people who were kind to you when you were drinking, those who prayed you sober? We are members of the human community. we do belong to a given community. I think if we are sober, and we are what we ought to be, I think we have a responsibility to that community. I think if you have children, there's an obligation to belong to the PTA or whatever it's called in your kids' schools and to become interested. I think you have a responsibility to listen to those who are not addicted people, who care for us and work themselves half to death in the world of research to try to learn a few things that might help us instead of condemning. I once heard a man say, a very brilliant doctor in our field was coming to give a talk somewhere. He said, this was his reaction, what the hell does he know about it? He's no alcoholic. Where do we come up with a mentality like that? Where? It seems that many develop the snobbishness of the have-nots. I've always said very often, alcoholics, from their exalted position in the gutter, look down their noses at the people on the sidewalk. Every single person to whom Bill and Dr. Bob reached out for help happened to be a non-alcoholic. I think that we are all obligated to trying to help another drunk, primarily to help ourselves. Bill Wilson was desperate. He wanted to drink. He was away from home. He was discouraged. His wife was not beside him, and he wanted to drink. And the only thing he knew to keep from drinking was what had worked before. And he reached out to help a drunk he didn't even know. Today I hear conditions laid down under which we will help another. Oh yeah, the guy down the street from me has a terrible drinking problem, but he knows I'm in AA. He knows where to come when he wants help. Nonsense. You wait for him to come to you, you'll go to his funeral first. Ladies and gentlemen, let us never ever forget how this whole thing began. Dr. Bob didn't call Bill Wilson. Bill called him. Didn't even know him. That's the way this thing works. And to me, the most frightening statement in AA is out of the traditions. Tradition 5, the group, the AA group has as its one primary purpose to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. And it doesn't say to carry the message to the alcoholic who picks up the phone, calls AA, and begs us to help him. It doesn't say that at all. I'm not advocating running into bars and dragging people to meetings. I'm not saying that at all. It takes prudence, common sense, and experience. But please remember that that's the way it started, and that's basic. People say, well, you're tempted to drink. Yes, call your sponsor. Yes, get to a meeting. But if you're still hurting and you get your notes out from the treatment days and you look at all that, try to help a drunk. Go to the meeting and pick some poor slob out who's having a worse time than you are. And say, hey, look, I ain't much, but I'm all I've got. Can I help you? That's what works. And I certainly hope that in all of treatment, the basics are never forgotten. I remember a man, a wonderful fellow, just 2 weeks ago, he said, Father, I hope you hit on language as being the interpreter of the mind. He said very often a foul mouth is indicative of a foul mind. And very often in AA we are subjected to language that you wouldn't use in a barnyard. I believe that the cleanup of language is one of the very first things that has to happen. For example, if I truly attribute my sobriety to a God of my understanding, I'm not about to drag his name around in the mud. When Bill Wilson was asked, what do you mean by a spiritual awakening? he said a profound, profound change in personality. And I think that a change in personality, in mind and attitude and thought, it has to externalize in our speech. And I would hope that the phrase, you have to be cruel to be kind, will never be uttered by anyone in the world of addiction. Cruel to the sickest of the sick. And I know that in some treatment centers they use a thing called the hot seat. I think that that is a violation of the most basic of human rights, a right to your own conscience. Let's get back to the basics, where one drunk, in his love for another, prompts him to seek him out and to try to help him in order to save his own neck. That's AA. That's what I've learned from people like Rip and people like you. AA is love, not cruelty. And I hope that as we all get better and better, we learn to love more and more deeply and more deeply. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I've said so often, it's the likes of you that keeps the likes of me going. And I'm very grateful for that. It's a nasty night out. It ain't a fit night out for man or beast. But nonetheless, you have come, and I appreciate it. And I bid you good night.